This presentation is going to be aired in both English and Spanish live on our YouTube channel, and of course you can watch the replay. Thank you for joining us. Today's presentation is about the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan that we're currently developing. Oops. And we just want to welcome you all here today. Before we move over to Supervisor Carrie Brown for opening remarks, we want to go over a few different details about this Zoom webinar platform. So we ask all of our participants to keep the background noise to a minimum, so remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you are joining us by phone, you can press *6 to unmute. Like I stated earlier, this meeting is in English and Spanish, so you're going to want to make sure you select the language of your choice. So on the bottom of your screen, if you're joining us on an app or computer, you're going to locate the interpretation icon, which is a globe, and you're going to select English or Spanish. Be sure to select mute original audio if you only want to hear the language without English or Spanish in the background. We're also going to have multiple opportunities through this presentation for you to ask questions. We do have the Q&A feature on the webinar, so you can type in your questions and we'll answer them when we get to that portion, or you can go ahead and raise your hand when we get to the Q&A. If you're joining us on the computer or on an app on an iPhone or iPad, there is a little icon to raise your hand. If you're joining us by phone, you're going to dial *9 to raise your hand. And before we move forward, I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Carrie Brown. She's the chair of the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency, to welcome you and start with some opening remarks. Supervisor Brown?
Thank you very much. Yes, here we are. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was signed into California state law by Governor Jerry Brown in September 2014. Its purpose is to ensure better local and regional management of groundwater use. It emphasized local management and encouraged local regional authorities to form a groundwater sustainability agency. With the stipulation of not doing so, the state would step in to implement the new law. A groundwater sustainability agency may exercise many powers as authorized in the law. Therefore, the Ukiah Valley was very fortunate to have local government, our local water districts, and local stakeholders come forward and form the agency. The Groundwater Sustainability Agency is required to adopt and then submit a Groundwater Sustainability Plan to the California Department of Water Resources. We have until 2022 to develop, prepare, and begin implementation of a Groundwater Sustainability Plan. Then we will have until 2040 to demonstrate groundwater sustainability has been achieved. The cost of implementation to date has been covered by the participating local government agencies, with the major expense being covered by funding from Proposition 1 and 68. This funding was obtained by the County of Mendocino Water Agency, who also provides staff. Our GSA holds monthly meetings with a few exceptions, and tonight is our community meeting to keep the public informed and receive your input. Ms. Duquette, please go forward.
Thank you, Supervisor Brown. So first, to go over the agenda. So tonight we're going to talk just a little bit about the governance of the GSA, so you understand how that functions, about our public engagement efforts and how we really value your participation and your feedbacks and comments, a little bit about the GSP technical process, what's in the plan, what's to come, and then next steps, how you can be involved along the way. Before we get started, you're going to hear a lot of acronyms throughout this presentation. I just want to touch on a few that you're going to hear a lot. One of them is the GSA, which is your local groundwater agency. Another one of them is a GSP, and that's what we refer to as the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. and of course SGMA, which is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So a little bit about the organization. The Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency was created in 2017 through a joint powers agreement. There are 6 seats on the board. Included in those seats are the County of Mendocino, represented by Supervisor Carrie Brown, the City of Ukiah, represented by Councilmember Douglas Crane, Russian River Flood Control and Water Conservation District, represented by Al White, the Upper Russian River Water Agency, which is currently being represented by Richard Mack. We have an agricultural seat, which is currently Zachary Robinson, and a tribal seat, which is Brandy Brown. So there's a lot of different groups that are involved in this process of creating the plan and, of course, the implementation. So we had the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and that agency formed a technical advisory committee. And on that committee, we have members of technical staff from the member organizations, as well as representation from the tribes, the agricultural communities, and we also have Sonoma Water, the Mendocino County RCD, and the California Land Steward Institute. We have a technical team that's led by Larry Walker and Associates, and you're going to hear from them later in this presentation. UC Davis, GEI, SCI, and of course we have some working groups, and that's when we take subject matter experts from different fields and they come and they work with us really to tackle specific subjects. A little bit about our technical advisory committee. So our chair of that committee is Glenn McGordy, who represents the county. We have Sean White from the city, Elizabeth Salamone from flood control, Sunny Elliott from the tribes, Levi Paulin for the agricultural rep, Don Seymour from Sonoma Water, Mike Webster from the RCD, and Laura Marcus from the California Land Steward Institute. So just a little bit about their roles and responsibility. So the GSAs are the ones that have the legal authority and responsibility of making sure that our medium priority basin has a groundwater plan, and that's implemented and we meet those requirements of state law. They developed the TAC because they wanted to have input and recommendations from technical staff. And then our technical team, we brought on board as consultants to help us develop the model, our management criteria, and the plan. And then working groups, which are used as on an as-needed basis. So one of our recent working groups is to look at the Potter Valley project and the impacts of groundwater. So those come up throughout the plan process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Bake with the county to talk a little bit more about the Sustainable Management Act. Andrew?
Good evening, all. Thank you, Sarah and Chair Brown, for providing a beautiful introduction. I'll be presenting a little bit of background on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. As Chair Brown said, the plan was passed in 2014 and adopted into law January 2015, midway through California's historic 2012 to 2017 drought. And as part of the law, it was passed because 60% of California's water comes from groundwater up to 60% comes from groundwater during drought seasons. And there was a big push from within the legislature to sort of manage this resource more sustainably. So the Department of Water Resources went in and categorized all of California's basins low, medium, or high priority. The medium and high priority basins were given deadlines to create the aforementioned GSAs and plans by 2020 and 2022. Ukiah Valley is a medium priority basin, so we'll be creating our plan submitting it by beginning of 2022. And as Chair Brown said, the state will intervene if the local agencies have not stepped up to the plate, but so far we are well on track to creating a long-term sustainable plan for the county and the basin. And so we are currently in the planning phase of the plan. So we're in the process of writing the plan right now, and we should be ready to submit it by June of 2021 for public comment. This plan is evaluated every 5 years up until that 2042 sustainable benchmark when our basin will achieve sustainability. Though we're well on the way already. And we are working now with obviously our local stakeholders, the public like yourselves, and the Larry Walker and Associates to making sure we don't have any undesirable groundwater outcomes. And so, as said before, the GSA was created in June of 2017, and we're working on that plan. We'll be presenting Chapter 2 today, and sort of an update on the model as it stands. And we'll be holding these public meetings more or less every month until June of 2021, when we'll submit the final plan for public comment and review. And then in January of 2022, will be submitted to DWR. And so that's why your input here is so critical for us, so we can really get a good grasp of what the stakeholders in the county want and need, and help. We can all help build our sustainable groundwater together. And as I said before, the key to SGMA success is that not only the GSP is accepted by DWR, but also the local stakeholders and the public like yourselves, because at the end of the day, it is local management. And this meeting is our first sort of outreach effort, or widespread outreach effort, and we hope to continue to get a lot of people listening in and contributing their opinions, because it's a shared resource. And to that end, we'll be inputting a few monitoring networks within the county and the basin to ensure we meet that groundwater sustainability goal. But we really need your help and your support and your opinions and commentary. And now a quick poll.
So throughout this presentation, we're going to give the group an opportunity to ask questions, but also we're going to do some polls throughout. So if you have any questions about governance, you can go ahead and drop that in the Q&A portal or raise your hand. Again, *9 if you're joining us by phone. I'm going to pull up the first poll. And we'd like to know a little bit more about where you're joining us from. So if you want to go ahead and select the area, just so we have a good idea of which portions of the basin are represented here tonight. And we'll just give everyone a couple more seconds. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand or drop them in the Q&A. Great, it looks like we have quite a few people from Ukiah. We have some Redwood Valley representation and Potter Valley. Showing our results. Thank you guys for joining us here tonight. And I don't see any questions yet. So we're going to hop on over to the next section and talk about public engagement. So why should the public be involved in this? As Andrew talked about, water is a vital part of our economy, the environment, and the quality of life here. And groundwater is essential for not just our irrigation, but also as a municipal resource for the Ukiah Valley. And all of us together need to work together to promote the health and longevity of the shared and valued resource. And a better plan with more trust and support can be developed with more public engagement. We want to make sure that all the people that share this resource in the Valley have an opportunity to learn about the project. Give us your comments, your feedback. Let us know what you're concerned about in terms of water availability and water management. Your feedback and impact will help not only the technical advisory committee, but also the board and their decision making, and the actions will improve, leading to better outcomes. And one key piece of the GSP is there are going to be regulatory components that if we do have a problem with groundwater, that there's ways that we can address it in our community to make sure that decision making really fits our local community. We need the public's input. So our goals, back about a year ago, we adopted a communication plan, and part of that was to make sure that we inform the public with balanced information, that we're providing with the science and the data that we're getting, that we consult with the public, and we have opportunities for ongoing feedback and comments on all of our decision making, and that we involve all the beneficial users. So that might be domestic well users, the agricultural community, our water district, our municipal our commercial water use, and that each of the beneficial users has a seat at the table and a chance to participate and let us know your concerns. To collaborate with our stakeholders, I want to thank a lot of our people on the webinar tonight who have volunteered to be on one-on-one stakeholder meetings and share their data and provide valuable feedback. And at the end of the day, we want to inform all engaged on how their input affects the decision. So we want it to be clear that when you provide us your feedback, that it actually is part of the decision-making process. We have a lot of different opportunities where you can learn more about the plan and participate. As Supervisor Carrie Brown mentioned, the board does meet frequently, and we meet the second Thursday of every month at 1:30. You can always join us. Right now it's virtual during COVID-19, but all of the meetings are also available on our YouTube channel, so if you miss it, you can always watch it. We do send out a lot of different emails and e-notifications, so you can be added to our email list. You can sign up for them online, or you can contact myself or Andrew, and we'll add you to our email list. So we also have our TAC meetings, which are open to the public, and those are on the second Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock. And there's a lot of great presentations and information, and all the details about the meetings and how to join are available on our website, mendocinocounty.org/UVBGSA. There will also be lots of opportunities throughout the plan where we're going to release chapters of the plan or components so that you can review them and make comments on these various public drafts. And our goal is to have the document in a draft form this summer so that there's plenty of opportunity for your feedback, input, and to make changes before we ultimately have to submit to DWR. And this is our first virtual meeting really focused on just the GSP. So in the past, you might have heard from us when we talked about creating the agency or just general background on SGMA, but this is really our first effort to kick off the community meetings focused around the different components of the GSP. So later in the presentation, we'll give you an idea of the different types of virtual community meetings and hopefully maybe an in-person meeting in 2021 on the different topics. So if you're interested, we welcome you to join. And of course, we'll be having them live streamed on YouTube and available to rewatch, and we're planning on offering the meetings in both English and Spanish. Like I mentioned before, we have our board meetings second Thursday of the month, our TAC meetings the second Wednesday of the month, and we will be having quite a few community meetings. And if you're on our email list, you'll definitely be able to get that information. And of course, we'll be posting on our website and our social media platforms. And as we develop working groups or one-on-one stakeholders, so we'll be setting up those meetings. So if you're from one of those groups and you're interested in meeting with us and sharing your concerns and feedback, please reach out to us. We'd love to chat with you. So with that, we're going to go to another opportunity to ask your questions. So you can leave that in the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand, and we'll launch another poll. Aha, sorry about that, guys, technology. So our next poll, we want to hear from you about how you'd like to participate, what works for you. Are you interested in attending the meetings, seeing more workshops, maybe having one of your wells included in our monitoring network, commenting on the plan, receiving updates through social media or website. So if you could go ahead and take out that phone, let us know how you want to hear about the plan. And you can select more than one option. We'll just give a couple more seconds for our participants to answer. So it looks like quite a few of you guys want to come to our meetings, and we're excited at that, and attend some of our working groups and sign up for our email list and social media. So your feedback is very beneficial. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Larry Walker and Associates to talk a little bit more about the GSP and the technical process. Laura?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you so much for calling in for this meeting today. And it's really the first one where we are just planning to give you an introduction, and then the next meetings will go way more into the details, but feel free to ask if you have some curiosity. And I really hope that this is gonna be the first one, and we will be able to gauge some interest and participation so that we can include this type of feedback into the plan. The Larry Walker team started working with the Ukiah GSA about 2 years ago. The past 2 years have been spent mostly really gathering the information that we need and all the technical information. So we felt like this was kind of the good time to get started with the public meeting, because we finally are at the point of we are able to tell you what we collected, we are able to tell you what we are doing, and the plan is really getting a shape right now. It was really a lot of let's say preparatory work, a lot of data gathering, a lot of gathering of information, and so if we look at what we will have to do in the next slightly more than 12 months, like 15, 16 months, we are planning to finish up all the technical work and start looking at some scenario between now and January 2021. Between February 2021 and June 2021, we are really thinking of drafting the key components of the plan, and I will be talking about this more in detail later, but it's what we will call sustainable management criteria and project and management actions. So this is really, let's say, the meat of our GSP, and with the goal of having a draft GSP fully done by summer 2021. We want to be optimistic, so we are saying June 2021, maybe July, but we will shoot for June. And that draft GSP will be out for comment. And we really would like to hear public comments sooner rather than later, because then if we get comments in the summer, we still have time to include those comments before the GSAs adopt the GSP and get submitted in January 2022. So this is a kind of what we are going to look forward in the next 16 months. Next. And so what this magic groundwater sustainability plan really includes, we are following what the Department of Water Resources provided us as an outline of the plan. And so we are working on an introduction, which is mostly about the administration and the governance that Sarah just went through, the GSA, formation of the GSA, and so on. And then we have a second chapter, which is about the plan area and the basin settings, which is where we basically demonstrate that we did all our due diligence in gathering all the needed information and understanding the system, understanding the current condition in the basin right now. And this is pretty much what we are almost wrapping up right now, and starting from this understanding of current condition for groundwater management. It's not only groundwater, but it's an integrated water management is what we need to move forward. And the most important chapters of this GSP are Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, where we will be talking about the criteria that the GSA need to decide upon in terms of criteria that will help us demonstrating that by 2042, this basin is fully sustainable. And it might be that to reach some of the goal that we will set in terms of sustainability, we will need to think about projects and management actions that will help in sustainably using the water resources in the basin. Next. So I was talking about these sustainable management criteria. What I would like to point out is that the way the law has been developed, basically it's aiming at demonstrating that in each of the groundwater basin that have been highlighted as basins where groundwater is used, and so there is the need to manage groundwater sustainably. What we need to demonstrate with Sigma is that the plan that we are putting together is preventing these 6 undesirable results. And the 6 undesirable results are lowering groundwater levels. So your plan should prevent groundwater levels to be lowered from using some kind of criteria that we will talk about later. We need to demonstrate that there is no reduction of storage, that there is no seawater intrusion. Obviously, for Ukiah Basin, this is something that we can pretty much right away say that it's not applicable. Demonstrate that the water quality is not going to be degraded, and there is no land subsidence, and also that we are not creating, the plan is not creating an impact on surface water, so it's not depleting the surface water. And these are the 6 undesirable results for which we need to develop sustainable management criteria and eventually management actions to demonstrate that by 2042 and actually on the longer vision by 2072, the basin is fully sustainable. And next. We like to look at these undesirable results and the criteria that we need to develop for understanding these undesirable results as thermometers. So imagine that it's like a thermometer that you can use to measure your fever, and we are trying to put on this thermometer some kind of level. And so, for example, if we take the first one, which is looking at lowering groundwater levels, there is basically a level below which you don't want to go, because below that value, you can clearly see that your basin is not sustainable and it's really going toward a direction that might not be recoverable in the future. So the red line, this minimum or maximum threshold, and it's usually the minimum threshold is maximum only for degraded groundwater quality. That's really the line that basically you don't want to cross. So if we think about groundwater levels, that line is where you decide that, okay, if I get here, I'm in trouble. I don't want my levels to be lower than this, because otherwise there will be so many actions required to really bring the to sustainability, and it might not even be possible. And there is a sort of green bar in these plots that says, okay, the green line is pretty much where I would like to be, where I think that the basin is fully sustainable. So that's the goal you are shooting for. And I think with this one, I just want to stop it for a second, and Sarah will bring up a poll. But what we are thinking is, if you think about these 6 undesirable results, which one do you think really is the most critical in this basin? So what do we really need to care about? And remember, we already got rid of seawater intrusion, so it's only 5. It's lowering groundwater levels, reduction of storage, degraded groundwater quality, land subsidence, and surface water depletion.
And we'll give you guys about a minute to fill out the poll for us.
Okay, so it looks like
Surface water depletion and lowering groundwater levels.
and that's actually what we know, and we will be really concentrating the most, because we understand that it's what is really important in this valley. So, and this is just a really hypothetical example, so of what we are doing physically to start thinking about these sustainable management criteria. The way SGMA has been drafted, we need to define sustainable management criteria for each of the undesirable results that now we know they are 5 for the Ukiah Valley. For each undesirable results, we need to define certain management criteria. One of the management criteria is the minimum threshold. So if we imagine that this graph is showing groundwater levels between 1990 and 2040, and we can decide that the undesirable results is that minimum value that probably happened some point in 2015, 2016, just either right after the drought. And anyway, this is an hypothetical plot. And so that's what we can define, like the undesirable results and what we think we don't want to reach anymore. Or maybe because of big drought, it can happen that we reach it again, but we need to have project and action in place that will help us go back into what is the green bar there, which is the measurable objective, which is basically where we would like to be, where we would like to see the basin and the groundwater levels in the basin to be in 2040, in 2042, and actually even later until 2072. And so these numbers, these values, the minimum threshold and the measurable objective, they really need to be actual numbers. So we will have to say the undesirable results is represented for this specific well by, for example, a depth to groundwater of, 50 feet. And I'm just throwing a number, but it's really not a qualitative description. It's really a number. And that's why we need all the science and all the technical work to really come up with a plan that shows how we can respect that specific number and how we can achieve if we are far away and we need to have project and management action in place for really achieving that specific goal. Next. And here I just wanted to point out the undesirable results must be significant and unreasonable. What is important in this slide is that the Department of Water Resources didn't define what is significant and unreasonable. That's a duty that's left with the Technical Advisory Committee and the GSA to decide what for the valley it's really unreasonable. So it's not that there is a rule set up and we can just run a quick calculation and say, okay, this is what it's unreasonable. No, we need to discuss together and try to come up together with a decision of what it's really unreasonable for the Ukiah Basin. And in a sense, that's a challenge, because sometimes, it's easier if they tell you, this is what you have to achieve. But SGMA has been done with this idea of providing local control and gathering local input, and really that's what we are striving for. So we really would like to be able to come up with a definition of undesirable results that kind of makes everybody in the valley happy, or at least everybody can survive with that definition, because obviously there will be different views, but we can find a common agreement at some point. And these undesirable results obviously can be different for each of the sustainability indicators, for each of the 5 indicators that we defined. So there is a defined sustainability indicator for groundwater levels, one for quality, one for subsidence. For example, we kind of already did our due diligence, and probably subsidence, it's another indicator that we can almost cross out for Ukiah Valley. So we still have to demonstrate that we looked at it, but there is no significant subsidence. And next. So how does this process for developing the sustainability, sustainable management criteria work? So we are discussing all together with the TAC, and we also ask you today, okay, which are the undesirable results that are really applicable? So the one for which we really need to pay specific attention. And what does the thermometer look like? So what is the limit that we don't want to cross in terms of thermometer boundaries for each of these undesirable results? We, as a technical team, we are helping in summarizing all the existing data. We can describe options, but then the process is really that the technical advisory committee proposes some sustainable management criteria for each undesirable results. These criteria go then and are presented to the board, so it's for the board to approve it, and it's for the public to comment on how we are developing these numbers. And it would be good, obviously, ideally, we would like to hear about big concerns sooner rather than later, so that we can adjust our direction as needed. And next. A key piece, and I want to bring it up here because, maybe you know a neighbor, you can talk to another neighbor, or it's important to have the public really engaged. We need to be able to demonstrate into the future that the basin is sustainable. And one of the ways to do it is to gather key data that are really going to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources every year, and are really going to demonstrate that everything is going fine in the basin, and there is no need for the state to make any intervention, because this is important. And so if the basin is not managed sustainably, and if the plan is not approved, then there is a state intervention. At that point, basically the local control goes away, and the State Water Board comes in and decide how to move forward. So basically, all the beauties of having local control goes away just because the state intervene. So it's important. We are working on building on a monitoring network. We are using existing monitoring networks. So, for example, for groundwater quality, we know that we can rely on the monitoring networks from the city, the wastewater treatment plant. So we have a lot of existing information. But if we look at groundwater levels, for example, Ukiah Valley is not really rich on monitoring data for groundwater levels, for example. And so through the grant that the GSA applied for, there is some funding for installing instrumentation for collecting groundwater data. And so if you have a well and you want to participate and you don't mind having your well monitored, I think would be good to know, because There is actually a rule, and we will be talking about this in the next meetings with the TAC and the board anyway. And so there is a minimum number of wells that needs to be selected in the basin to demonstrate sustainability for the next years. So we will have to start enlarging the programs, and we need to have people on board and available to give us well access. So it's really important. And we wanted to bring the information about the network here so that you can maybe think about it, or if your neighbor has a well that you think it's a perfect well, you can put us in touch. Next. And this is really just to give you a big picture. We understand, and we work in other basins, SGMA is bringing a lot of challenges. It's a lot of work that maybe many in the counties and in the GSAs didn't even think about doing, because it's kind of came as a big burden. But let's put it that way, and it's a challenge. It's providing a lot, is bringing a lot of challenges, but it's also providing opportunities. And just to be very honest, one of the opportunities for the GSA and for the counties, for example, to be able to get this grant money to develop a water management plan. And that's something that probably would have not happened without SGMA. So let's see the positive side of doing all this extra work. And when we think at SGMA, it's really at the end of the day a balancing act between supply, and the supply are, in principle, is the climate, is the precipitation that comes into your watershed. And we know that that's kind of variable, but it's not only that. We also know that there is a release from Lake Mendocino, for example, and we know perfectly that there is a lot of discussion about what's happening in the Potter Valley project, and that's very important for a lot of the people in the valley. And kind of a type of supplies that we can consider are, for example, groundwater recharge. A lot of areas in California are thinking about recharging the aquifers in the winter time, so when there is water available, to then use this water in the summertime when it's needed for irrigation and more for drinking purposes. And on the other side, there is the demand of groundwater, and there are pumping because of agriculture. We know that there are some changes in land use that might be considered in some of the areas. I'm not implying that this is one of the things that we are including or considering for Ukiah Valley, but in other places it's happening. Sometimes there are changes in land use that are not really happening because of SGMA, but they are happening independently, and they are causing some kind of troubles because it's a change with respect to the actual conditions in the valley. And together with this idea on supply and demand, it comes the request for, okay, what are projects, what are ideas, what are management actions that we can think about? Let's imagine that we are all worried that because of the climate, the valley will get maybe the same amount of precipitation, but this precipitation will come as a big storm just in few days. And it's not possible to really store all that water. And this is really providing a challenge for the summer season when the water is needed. And so it's really gonna be what we will be doing as our goal from now on until March, April, something like that, when we will have an idea, is really brainstorming with the TAC, with the board, and with the public, and with whoever wants to talk to us, brainstorm about how this supply and demand balancing act can really be in place in Ukiah. How can it be successful into the future, considering what we know that can happen in the valley and all the changes in the climate as well. And I think we have a quick poll here as well, because, no, Yeah, I think we have a poll, right? And just because we want to gather some, we totally understand if you have no idea, but it would be nice to get just a feeling of what you think is going to be the major challenge in terms of water supply and water demand in the area.
You should see a poll on your screen asking you about those major changes.
Yeah.
And we'll give everyone another 30 seconds to answer the poll.
Okay. And we're getting to learn your valley, so we are not surprised about seeing that the Potter Valley project is really one of the key uncertainties for the future. And when we started working, we really didn't have an idea exactly of what was the impact of this project. And now we're learning more and more. So that's why we are directing a lot of our a lot of our efforts are really going in trying to understand which scenarios and what we can do to try to simulate what's happening, what will happen based on different options for the Potter Valley project. Good. So I think we can kind of close it up. And I just want to tell you that so it's not that we didn't do anything in the past 2 years. Actually, Amir, my colleague, is here, and it's really the one who made the biggest effort on this. We are developing for the Ukiah Valley Basin a big integrated model. And so this hydrological model really consider how much, in very lay terms, how much water is coming into the basin thanks to precipitation. And so we have we include the precipitation, and we include evapotranspiration also from natural vegetation. And this model fits into a groundwater model. And the groundwater model is really looking at surface water and groundwater availability. And so it's really helping us understanding what's the interaction between surface water and groundwater. But because there is an agricultural component in your valley, we also have a tool which is called Irrigation Demand Calculator. And we are using this tool to basically estimate the demands for crops and how this demand is met using either groundwater or surface water for irrigation. So it looks like a simple thing, but it was a lot of effort in the making. And if you're curious to get more information, we usually present a lot of details at the TAC meeting, a little bit less at the board meeting. But anyway, we always provide an update on how this tool comes together and why it's this tool so important, because this is what we can use to run possible future scenarios. So I want to give you the scenarios that probably you don't want to think about. Let's imagine that Lake Mendocino is empty and there is no water coming out of Lake Mendocino. With this tool, we can see what's going on, where the groundwater levels are going, which is such an extreme condition. And it's just to give you an idea. Or we need to run also some climate scenarios looking into future projections. So if precipitation is gonna decrease by a certain amount over the next 50 years, we can look at business as usual, so not changing anything in your actual population, water demand, and agricultural demand. And we can look at what happens just because of potential changes in the climate. And as I said, it's we are trying to develop a model which is going to be easy to be integrated in a bigger effort, which includes the entire Russian River. So that's even better. And that's also why we decided to go for this approach, because Ukiah Valley, it's a piece of a larger basin, and it might be important for the future to be able to look at the entire basin in a consistent way. But this is not going to happen by when this GSP needs to be developed. So what we concentrated on for now is really the Ukiah Valley watershed and the Ukiah Valley groundwater basin. And we put together and collected all the available information, hopefully. Probably we missed something, but I think we have most of them. And I think we can open it up for questions on the GSP development. And
so you guys can leave your questions in the question and answer at the bottom of your screen. You can also press *9 to raise your hand if you're joining us by phone, or raise your hand. The first question I see comes from our Q&A box, and it's, will impacts of measurable objectives include consideration of impacts to different socioeconomic groups?
Yeah, I mean, tell me if I'm interpreting correctly the question. So I would say it will, because in principle, the measurable objectives should really demonstrate that the basin is sustainable. So there should not be impact for any of the community groups in the valley. So that's the idea. I can see, I don't know, I can give you an example. I can see in other basin there is some fear of potential impact, for example, on domestic wells and just small pumpers that rely on domestic wells for drinking water. And obviously the plan should be, to the extent possible, should be preventing water levels from decreasing too much and really causing too many domestic wells to go dry. In some other basin, they are already considering, like, there are some areas where it's impossible to recover from and get conditions for which domestic wells are again able to pump, and the GSA is putting in place a financing system so that they are thinking about lowering some of the pumps for some of the domestic users. And let me know if you had something else in mind with the question, but I would say that in principle, the plan and the measurable objectives should be something that each group should be, even if maybe not happy with, but able to live with in the future.
One question that I get answered or asked a lot is, can measurable objectives look different in different parts of the basin?
Absolutely. Actually, I was not clear on that. So measurable objective in all the sustainable management criteria can be very different, well by well. So we will do our job will be to really look at well by well and define the measurable objective really specifically for that specific well. And obviously we will decide all together on an approach, but just an approach that might be working for all the wells, but the criteria will be defined for each well, because each well has a different trend, each well has a different behavior, so we can really not make just one number.
So I don't see any other questions. Remember, you can always put your questions in the comment box or raise your hand. We're going to move over to talk about next steps, and then you'll have another opportunity to ask any of your questions before we end the meeting. So Laura touched on this a little bit, and I'll let her chime in a minute. Oh. Mm-hmm.
Are we all still here? Hello?
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
That's a great reminder. Feedback on what socioeconomic groups we really need to be looking at, or which area of the basin, so we can do some targeted outreach and targeted considerations. So just a little bit about what's coming up. So as Laura mentioned, we're in the final stages of finishing the model, and they're currently doing model calibration and looking at future scenarios to run, and also finalizing portions of Chapter 2, which focuses on the historical and projected water budgets. And so we're going to have Chapter 2 out for public comment really soon. And we're going to be releasing them in chapters and in segments, so it's not so overwhelming. So you have an opportunity to just focus on in key areas. So that's really what we're working on for October and November. And then we'll really be focusing on running those future scenarios, like Laura mentioned, the climate change models, looking at scenarios we need to run for the Potter Valley project, possibly looking at opportunities. Yes?
I think, so Beth is putting on the Q&A that something happened and they lost our sound, I think. I think that there should be something going on with the translation.
Beth, can you hear us? Great.
There was a loss in sound.
Sometimes I think the technical toggling between language might have some technical difficulties. Oops. So over the next November to May, the team's going to be working on those future scenarios, looking at possible anywhere from development to population growth, climate change, and really working with the TAC and the board to narrow in what kind of scenarios do we really need to be focused on. And your answers from the polling tonight definitely helped. And then they'll be looking at sustainable yield analysis starting in January. We're continuing to put together a monitoring network and adding more wells, and we'll have a monitoring network evaluation in the early spring. And then projects and management actions in May 2021. And I believe as we roll out, because the chapters are fairly large, we'll be rolling out management criteria in phases. So you'll see a few at a time. Supervisor Brown? Yes.
I just wanted to include, we're getting to the end of our meeting. Is that correct?
We just have a few more slides, and then we'll have Q&As, and then that will be it for tonight.
Okay, and I'd like a final comment when we're ready. Thank you.
No problem. And so what you're going to see over the next few months from us is a number of opportunities to have these community meetings. They may be virtual for a while, depending on the COVID-19 situation. But the next meeting is really going to go into a lot more detail, focused on that integrated model. What were the results? Looking at the historic and current water budgets, and talking about the future water budgets and future scenarios we're going to be looking at, and in further detail on the sustainable management criteria development process. And we think we'll have probably anywhere from most likely 3, maybe 4 public meetings. And of course, we're also going to do some one-on-ones for with stakeholders. So if you're sit on a local commission or board, or you are a farmer, possibly involved in different organizations, we want to hear from you, and we can easily do a one-on-one meeting with you to hear about your concerns and your information. And so with that concludes our first presentation. I'll turn it over to Carrie Brown for some closing comments. We recorded this in English and in Spanish, and we will have it on YouTube right now, and we'll have it on the replay. So feel free to share the information or rewatch if you missed part of it. Supervisor Brown?
Thank you very much. And Sarah, I'd like to thank you and Andrew for putting this together tonight. And certainly Laura, wonderful to have you here to do the presentation for the public. It is important to keep involved. Without all of you engaging, it would be an isolated plan. Thank you for being here tonight, and please continue to stay engaged. Thank you.
Just want a quick thanks to all of our participants. I know it's not always easy having to join webinars and doing all of the Zoom, which is kind of our current normal, but thank you for attending. Our contact information is on all of the flyers. We're here and willing to sit down and talk with you. So with that, thank you for coming, and we hope that you will join us next time and share with your other organizations and friends, and hopefully we'll have lots of participation over the next year. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, we have one more before we jump off. Madeline, if you want to stay on, we'll answer your question. Will the climate change model be explained during the scenario session?
Yes, absolutely. So we are doing there are some scenarios so that you know that have been designed by Department of Water Resources. So we are kind of required, or at least they would like us to run those scenarios, but because of the specific of the basin, we are also considering other options. So I want to say that this is the first version of a plan, and the plan will be reviewed every 5 years, and there will be improvements. So it might be that we will start running some scenarios right now, and most likely the Department of Water Resources scenarios. And then in the next 5 years, we may come up with different type of scenarios that we think are more tailored to the basin. So it's going to be a process. But yes, we will most likely at the next public meeting, which I imagine is going to be early 2021, something like that, we will be discussing the climate change scenarios. And we didn't do it today because by the time we get to that meeting, we will also have the model results. So we will be able to show you physically what does this climate change scenario really mean.
And Madeline?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, the only thing I wanted to say, I'm a planning commissioner, and I think the work you're doing may have implications for planning as well. And so it would be very nice at some point if the Planning Commission could get some sort of a presentation about this in case they're not plugged into this meeting. I'm interested, so I'm plugged in, but maybe everybody is not.
I think we can do that, Madeline, especially when we have the actual model, because I think the modeling and also some of these management criteria, it is going to play a lot into land use, because you guys are making decisions in the valley, and this is the population hub that impacts development and water use.
And if there's some kinds of uses that are just not sustainable, we kind of need to know it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So anyway, thank you. That was my only question.
I'll talk with Adrian and Julia over at PBS, and maybe in early 2021 when we have the model results, we can set something up and present to the Planning Commission. We'd love your feedback and to hear about kind of what development concerns you guys have, or different development decisions that we should be thinking about.
Okay, I submitted the other question as well. And I just want to make sure that we are aware that there are plenty of communities in California where ag gets plenty of water and their workers have no potable water whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure we don't get to that place. I will not agree to that.
I agree. And we're really trying to focus on making sure that we consider the agricultural workers, some of our smaller domestic users, and some of our disadvantaged communities, and also the tribal communities. So yeah, we're definitely looking at those things.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Madeline.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Until next time. Thank you,
Ciao.
Scott, for live streaming.